Star Wars is everywhere. I think that's a statement that we all can agree on. Star Wars is everywhere. It's in movies, TV shows, cartoons, video games, it's books, Legos, f***ing Dr. Squatch soap. There's just a ton of stuff, and it can honestly be overwhelming to the new or casual fan. Believe it or not, there are people who simply cannot get into this universe, whether they aren't able to understand the abstract sci-fi fantasy aspect, or maybe there's just too much media and they don't know where to begin, or what's important versus what isn't important. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have no intention to shame people or make fun. In fact, I'm going to do the opposite. If you clicked on this video, chances are you fit some of that criteria and you want some help. A guide, if you will. And so that's what I'm going to do. Starting with this video, I, Donker Dank, will show you kind people how to get into Star Wars. Today's video will just focus on the movies, all 9 episodic films and both spin-offs. The big thing for beginners is where to start watching the movies. We have 3 trilogies of movies. We have the original trilogy with Episode 4, A New Hope, 5, Empire Strikes Back, and 6, Return of the Jedi. We have the prequel trilogy, Episodes 1, The Phantom Menace, 2, Attack of the Clones, and 3, Revenge of the Sith. And then the sequel trilogy, which is Episode 7, The Force Awakens, 8, The Last Jedi, and 9, The Rise of Skywalker. But a lot of people get mixed up on which of the first 2 trilogies to watch first. Like, do I watch Episode 1 first or Episode 4? This is only an issue because of how the movies are numbered. Like, how can the first movie to come out be named Episode 4, but Episode 1 is the 4th movie to be released? Why do 1, 2, and 3 look so much newer than 4, 5, and 6? This is because George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, loved the idea of starting a story in the middle point. He found it to be the most interesting way to tell a story, which is why I recommend you watch the original trilogy first, then the prequels, and then the sequels. The movies are pretty self-explanatory in what goes on. Like, it's not Pulp Fiction or Inception where you have to piece together the plot. But hey, sometimes people do get lost in these movies, so here are the bare essentials. The original trilogy is the meat, the main focus of the Star Wars franchise. This is where you have Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, the Empire fighting the Rebellion. Like, this is the core Star Wars story. The basics here are that the evil Empire controls the galaxy and dominates everything. The rebels are the good guys, who want to take down the Empire and restore peace and justice. The Empire has only existed for a couple of decades, and they've already killed off most of the Jedi Knights. These are the superpowered individuals who get their power from the Force in order to protect and help people across the galaxy. What is the Force? It's an energy that connects all living people together, and it can be used by the Jedi through years' worth of mental and physical training. Think of the Jedi like religious superheroes. They only care about helping others and have no selfish desire of their own. Before the Empire took over, the galaxy was run by a republic with the Jedi as their guardians. Now, there are people like the Jedi who use the Force, but for evil and their own power. These are the Sith. Kind of like the opposite of the Jedi. They only want power for themselves and will hurt and kill innocent people to get it. The Republic was overthrown in secret by the Sith, and when that happened, they destroyed the Jedi Order, leaving only a few survivors. This is basically the main conflict in Star Wars. Light versus dark, good versus evil, that sort of thing. But like I said, the original trilogy is about the rebels fighting the Empire. We follow Luke Skywalker and his friends Han Solo and Princess Leia as he trains to be a Jedi and save the galaxy by taking down the Empire and the Emperor's second-in-command, Darth Vader. The prequel trilogy takes place 30 years before all of this and shows us how the Republic turned into the Empire during the galaxy-wide Clone Wars, and how the Sith took over and wiped out the Jedi Knights. Here we follow Luke's father, Anakin Skywalker, and what role he played in the fall of the Republic. The sequel trilogy takes place 30 years after the original movies and has the Empire return in the form of the First Order, led by Supreme Leader Snoke and Kylo Ren. The original characters like Luke, Han, and Leia take a back seat to the newer heroes like Rey, Poe, and Finn. That's basically all you need to know. Now, don't get me wrong, these movies are not complex to figure out, or at least the originals aren't. But if you needed help understanding, well, that's the important stuff. So right now, I would say you have all the info needed to go watch the movies. So go do that. Go onto Disney Plus and watch them all. Now, let's say you did watch some of the movies and you're still a little confused, or you don't understand how they tie into each other. If that's the case, then let me give you some more context for what's going on before each trilogy starts. And I'm doing this with only the information provided in the movies. So don't worry, I'm not going to go super nerd on you and expect you to read a bunch of books or whatever. I'm going to keep it nice and simple. Minor spoilers ahead. The backstory for the first Star Wars film, A New Hope, is like this. For thousands of years, the Old Republic ruled the galaxy, and they had the Jedi Knights to protect them and keep the peace. Some years before A New Hope, the Clone Wars raged across the galaxy. People like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Princess Leia's father fought in that war. When the conflict ended, the Republic was damaged enough that the leader of the Republic, a corrupt man named Palpatine, took advantage of the situation to become the Emperor and organized the Republic into the evil Galactic Empire, which ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. After some time, a lot of good people got fed up with the Empire and slowly but surely began to fight back, forming a group of scrappy fighting underdogs called the Rebellion. This conflict would be called the Galactic Civil War. Right before A New Hope takes place, the Rebellion won their first major victory against the Empire and were able to steal the plans for the Death Star, which was the Empire's ultimate weapon that can destroy planets. And that's where the first movie begins. We meet Leia, Luke, Ben/Obi-Wan Kenobi, Han Solo, and Chewbacca, as well as Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers, who were the soldiers of the Empire. The next movie, Empire Strikes Back, takes place 3 years after A New Hope, and shows the Empire's revenge against our heroes for blowing up the Death Star, as well as Luke's Jedi training and the shocking reveal about the connection between him and Darth Vader. And also Lando. The last movie, Return of the Jedi, takes place a year after that and is the final battle that our heroes have versus the Empire and their second Death Star, thus closing out the original trilogy. Pretty straightforward. Then we come to the prequel trilogy, which has a lot more going on in the background, so I will do my best. To understand the prequel movies, one needs to understand the Sith and what they are. Thousands of years ago, again, there was tension within the Jedi Order because many of them wanted to use the dark side of the Force. The rest of the Jedi didn't like that, so they fought, and the Dark Jedi split from them, becoming the Sith. They were like the sworn enemy of the Jedi, always going to war against them. Then, 1,000 years before A New Hope, the Sith were destroyed in a final battle, or so the Jedi thought. But in secret, the Sith survived, and in very small numbers, ending with Darth Sidious, aka Palpatine. Over the years, the Sith influenced the events of the galaxy, causing discontent and corruption within the Republic. Corporations would have power in the government, and their greed led to innocent people suffering. One of these was the Trade Federation, who threatened and invaded the peaceful world of Naboo, which is where the first movie of the prequels, The Phantom Menace, begins. Taking place 32 years before A New Hope, The Phantom Menace sees a young Obi-Wan Kenobi and his master Qui-Gon Jinn go to save the Queen of Naboo from the Trade Federation, to which they must go to the capital of the Republic, a planet called Coruscant, to seek help. Along the way, they come across a young slave boy named Anakin Skywalker on Tatooine. But all the while, in secret, Darth Sidious and his apprentice Darth Maul are pulling the strings, orchestrating the events that we see in the film. In the grand scale of things, this movie doesn't appear to be as epic or large like the originals, because all the important stuff happens in the background. It's more subtle, in a way. The second prequel, Attack of the Clones, takes place 10 years after The Phantom Menace, and in that time, Anakin has been taught by Obi-Wan Kenobi in the ways of the Jedi. The Republic is also going through a lot of tension as many systems start to leave, forming a group called the Separatists. They are led by Count Dooku, a former Jedi that secretly works with Sidious in order to orchestrate a giant galaxy-wide conflict. The Republic is attempting to make an army in the event of a war. Padme, who was the Queen of Naboo, is now a senator and tries to stop this war before it begins. This makes her a target for assassination, which is where Attack of the Clones begins, as Obi-Wan and Anakin are tasked with protecting her. While Anakin and Padme fall in love, Obi-Wan goes on a quest to find out who's trying to kill her, which leads him to Kamino, where we learn about the clone army that was made for the Republic in secret. The movie ends with the climactic Battle of Geonosis, the clone troopers of the Republic fighting the battle droids of the Separatists. This is the first battle of the Clone Wars. 3 years later, we come to our last prequel, Revenge of the Sith. The war is about to be won by the Republic, but all is not as well as it seems. This is the movie where Darth Sidious enacts his grand plan to take over the galaxy and destroy the Jedi Order. Basically, this is the movie where everything changes and sets up the events of the original trilogy. We see the rise of the Empire, the fall of the Republic, and the origins for Darth Vader. Luke and Leia are born near the end of this movie, 19 years before we would see them in A New Hope, thus closing out the prequel trilogy. Finally, this leads us to the sequel trilogy, which takes place after the original movies. 30 years after, to be exact. Shortly after the Battle of Endor and the death of the Emperor, the rebellion won the Galactic Civil War against what remained of the Empire, but in secret, the Imperial remnant went into hiding and spent the next couple of decades rebuilding their forces with the help of the dead Emperor. That will make sense later, I promise. But yes, the rebellion won, and they became the New Republic. Luke would start a Jedi Academy in order to rebuild the Jedi Order. Han and Leia got together and they had a son called Ben, who would be taught by Luke on how to use the Force. But as the years went on, things got darker. The remnant of the Empire came back and became the powerful First Order, led by the evil and mysterious Supreme Leader Snoke. He would then corrupt Ben Solo and turn him into Kylo Ren, and together they destroyed Luke's new Jedi Order. Ashamed of letting this happen, Luke went into exile. As the threat of the First Order rose, the New Republic desperately formed an army to defend themselves. This would be called the Resistance. The first sequel movie, The Force Awakens, begins here, with the First Order searching for a map that leads them to Luke Skywalker. Here we meet Poe Dameron, Finn, and Rey on their quest to get the map and to take on the First Order's massive new weapon, Starkiller Base. What isn't stated in the movie is that when Starkiller Base destroys Hosnian Prime, this is the moment that the New Republic officially falls apart and dissolves, and is also the start of the First Order Resistance War. Yes, that is the official name for the war. Doesn't really roll off the tongue like Clone Wars, does it? But yes, that is all the important background information for The Force Awakens. The next movie, The Last Jedi, is easy because it takes place right after The Force Awakens, like there's no time in between. So you can watch The Last Jedi right after The Force Awakens and not have any questions. The final sequel movie, The Rise of Skywalker, is when things get a little tricky. Taking place 1 year after The Last Jedi, we start off with Kylo Ren as the new Supreme Leader going to Exegol to meet the person behind the First Order's creation, Palpatine. Only, not really. The Palpatine in this movie is not the same exact Palpatine that we saw in the first 6 movies. He's actually a clone, which is also not explained in the movie. You see, during the time of the Empire, Palpatine made it a priority to have himself cloned in the event that he is killed. You actually get to see this in the TV shows, but more on that later. The important thing is that Palpatine's return and his buildup of an army on Exegol was something that he had been planning for ever since he became the Emperor. And that's all you really need to know for The Rise of Skywalker, the grand finale of the newest film trilogy, and the final battle between the First Order and the Resistance. And now, you can watch all 9 of these movies and not be lost. How awesome is that? But wait, Donkerdank, you might say, weren't there other Star Wars movies that aren't called episode blah blah blah? Yes, you are correct. These are the spin-off movies. They tell a smaller story that connects to the larger picture of the Star Wars saga. These are Rogue One and Solo, a Star Wars story. Don't worry about the Clone Wars, I'll get into that in the next video. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, takes place right before Episode 4 A New Hope, and I mean right before. This movie follows Jyn Erso, daughter of an Imperial scientist who is tasked by the rebels to get info from her father on the new Imperial weapon, the Death Star. She is joined by Cassian Andor and a bunch of other colorful-ish characters, and adventures ensue. Remember when I mentioned that A New Hope takes place right after the rebels' first victory against the Empire? Well, this is that victory. This is when the rebels steal the plans for the Death Star. And the neat thing is, you could watch this movie all by itself and not miss anything. I mean, yes, some characters do connect to other TV shows, but that's more of an Easter egg than essential viewing. I cannot say the same for the other spin-off, Solo, a Star Wars story. Taking place 10 years before A New Hope, Solo shows the origin story of, you won't believe it, Han Solo. We see how he becomes a smuggler, him meeting Chewbacca and Lando, and how he wins the Millennium Falcon. That's all fine and good. The problem comes at the end of the movie. Without spoiling it, there's a character who appears that if you only have the movies to go off of, you're going to be confused. Like, how is this guy alive? That sort of thing. It's not a huge issue, but it can be a little distracting. But that is it. That is all you really need to know about the Star Wars movies, all 11 of them. That sounds like a lot, but for comparison, the Marvel Cinematic Universe just released their 35th movie, so 11 ain't bad, trust me. Truthfully, the Star Wars movies are pretty self-contained and easy to understand, and that's not including all the opening crawls that play before each movie that literally set up the film. But sometimes it can be overwhelming, keeping track of how all these stories connect to each other. And that's why I wanted to make this video. I know there's some kind people out there that want to get into Star Wars, but feel restricted in what they can watch simply by not understanding what's going on. And I hope my little explanations for each trilogy help. My goal was to keep it simple and only go into what's necessary for the plot and not overcomplicate things. The prequel trilogy was the most tricky to do, having to explain how something as mundane as taxes and trade routes turn into all-out warfare in the rise of the Empire. But if you liked this video, please stick around for the next part where I go into the many different TV shows set in the Star Wars universe. Basically, I'm giving you an explanation to everything you see on Disney+. And that's all I got. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving me a like or a subscribe or a comment. Once again, I am Donker Dank. I make videos about the things I like that I have no one else to talk about with. And I'll see you in the next one.